A heart left broken. The house felt colder than it had before, and the silence was deafening. Noah stood by the window, staring out at the empty yard. The swing set, once a symbol of joy and laughter, now sat idle in the corner of the garden, its chains clinking gently in the breeze. It felt like the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. But Noah knew nothing would. Not anymore. It had been 3 years since Emma's tragic accident, yet the pain still felt as raw as the day she had left him. His heart ached as if the loss were fresh. The ache in his chest was constant, a heavy, gnawing emptiness that seemed to grow with every passing day. Sometimes, Noah would wake up in the middle of the night, his hand reaching for the empty space beside him, hoping for just a moment of comfort. But it was always empty, always quiet. Noah closed his eyes, his mind wandering back to that day, the last day he saw her, her laughter still echoing in his mind. Emma, at only 6 years old, had always been full of life, a little bundle of energy who lit up every room she entered. He remembered her begging him to push her higher on the swing set, her giggles like music in the air as she soared through the sky. But the day ended in a way that Noah would never forget. The phone call, the flashing lights, the sound of the officer's voice telling him there had been an accident. It all happened so fast. His world had come crashing down in an instant. Emma was gone. The days that followed were a blur of grief and numbness. Noah couldn't process it all. He couldn't understand how something so sudden could take his little girl away from him. It felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. The funeral was just a blur of faces and sorrow, and afterward, Noah had been left alone, with only memories and pain as his companions. The house, once filled with Emma's laughter, had become a cold, hollow shell. Noah couldn't bear to change anything. Her favorite toys remained where she had left them, on the shelves, the playroom still set up as it had been, the little stuffed bear perched on her bed, as though waiting for her to return. It was as if, in some irrational way, preserving everything would keep her close to him. But no matter how much he tried to hold on to the past, it slipped further and further away from him. The rooms in the house seemed larger now, emptier. He found himself wandering through the halls aimlessly, unable to focus on anything, unsure of what to do with himself. The grief came in waves, sometimes overwhelming him to the point where he couldn't breathe. He didn't know how to live with it, but he also didn't know how to let it go. Noah had always been the kind of man who focused on what needed to be done. When Emma had been alive, he had been her rock. He had been the dad who picked her up after school, made dinner, helped with homework, and kissed her goodnight. He had been so sure of his purpose. But now, without her, he was lost. He didn't know who he was anymore. It wasn't just the silence that hurt. It was the absence of purpose. His life had been so intertwined with Emma's, her hopes, her dreams, her future. And now it was gone. He had nothing left to hold on to except memories that felt like they were slipping through his fingers every day. Noah ran his hand through his hair and sighed. There was so much that he wanted to do for her, so much that he couldn't do anymore. He wished he had been able to protect her better. If only he had been there, if only he had been more vigilant. But the guilt was a constant companion, one that he couldn't shake. In the months that followed, Noah tried to move forward. He returned to work, but the days felt endless. Everything felt hollow, like he was just going through the motions. There was no joy in his life anymore, no spark. He did everything he could to keep himself busy, but when the workday was over, the silence would return. Noah knew he needed something, anything, to break the monotony, but he didn't know where to start. And then came the call. It had been late one evening when his phone buzzed with a call from the adoption agency. He stared at the screen for a moment, confused. He had filled out some forms a while back, wondering if he could ever be ready to take on the responsibility of raising a child again, but he hadn't expected a call so soon. The voice on the other end was warm, understanding, but urgent. "Mr. Ellis," the woman asked, "we have a situation, and we need your help." Noah listened intently as she explained the circumstances. Two young girls, twins, had been through an unimaginable ordeal. Rejected by every family they had been placed with, the girls had no one. The agency was desperate to find them a home, and Noah's name had come up. He hadn't expected to say yes, not at first. He wasn't sure he was ready for something like this. He wasn't sure he had the capacity to love again, to welcome another child into his life when his heart was still so broken. But there was something in the woman's voice, a quiet plea for help, that stirred something deep inside him. It wasn't pity. It was a sense of responsibility, a recognition that these girls needed him. And maybe, just maybe, he needed them too. After some soul-searching, Noah agreed to meet the girls. When Maya and Lily arrived at his doorstep, he could see it in their eyes. Something had happened to them. They were only 6, but there was an oldness to their gaze, a depth of sorrow that shouldn't belong to children so young. They were shy at first, quiet and unsure. But as the days went on, Noah began to see glimpses of their personalities. Maya was the more outgoing of the two, always asking questions, her wide eyes filled with curiosity. Lily, on the other hand, was quieter, more reserved, but there was an intelligence in her that Noah couldn't ignore. The twins were a puzzle, one that Noah didn't yet know how to solve. Their past was a mystery, one that they didn't talk about, one that was shrouded in secrecy. But as Noah spent more time with them, he began to notice strange things. Maya would sometimes talk in her sleep, whispering things that didn't make sense. Lily would stare at him with an intensity that was unsettling, as though she could see right through him. But Noah didn't press. Not yet. He had promised to be their father, to protect them and help them heal. He couldn't afford to let his fears take over. The girls needed him. As the days turned into weeks, Noah settled into a new routine. The house wasn't as empty anymore. The laughter of Maya and Lily filled the spaces that Emma's absence had left behind. And though it was impossible to forget Emma, Noah felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time, a spark of hope. But that spark was fragile. And just as Noah began to feel like he could breathe again, something happened that would change everything he thought he knew about Maya and Lily, something that would shatter the peace he had just begun to rebuild. It started with a simple document, a piece of paper tucked away in a drawer, something that would reveal a truth Noah wasn't prepared for. The truth about the twins' past, the unfolding mystery. Noah had never been one to shy away from a challenge, but as the days passed, a growing unease began to settle in his chest. There was something about Maya and Lily that seemed off. It wasn't just their past, though that was a shadow that hung over them like an unspoken secret. It was something in the way they looked at him, something in the way they behaved. They were sweet girls, yes, and they had their moments of playfulness, but there were times when Noah would catch them staring at him, long, intense gazes that made him feel as though they could see right through him. The house was never quite the same as it had been with Emma. There was an energy now, a tension, a quiet curiosity from the twins that kept Noah on edge. They were always together, the two of them, whispering to each other when they thought no one was listening. Sometimes their words were barely audible, like a language only they understood. He tried to dismiss it as innocent sibling bonding, but something about their closeness seemed almost unnatural. It wasn't until Noah began to unpack a box of old paperwork that he stumbled upon something that would shift the foundation of everything he thought he knew. The document was buried deep inside a pile of papers from the adoption agency, one that he hadn't noticed when the girls first arrived. At first he assumed it was just an old medical form or a social worker's report, but when he unfolded it and began to read, his pulse quickened. It was a birth certificate. Noah's hand trembled slightly as he read the names at the top of the paper, Maya and Lily Ellis. But it wasn't just the names that caught his attention. It was the small, inconspicuous details beneath. The mother's name was listed as Isabella Angelica Knox, but what truly struck Noah was the line that followed, almost as an afterthought. Parents, unknown. His breath caught in his throat. Isabella Knox. That name, it was so familiar. He had heard it before, though he couldn't quite place where. But even more concerning was the fact that the girl's biological parents were listed as unknown. This was a standard entry for many children in the foster care system, but something about it sent a shiver down his spine. Noah's mind raced as he tried to piece together the fragments of information that didn't seem to fit. The twins had been passed through 13 families, rejected by each one. That was unusual, but not entirely unheard of. What troubled Noah, however, was the secrecy. Why had these girls been kept in the system for so long? Why had no one been willing to take them in permanently? He flipped the birth certificate over and found another small piece of information that sent his heart into a tailspin. There was an organization listed as the Legal Guardian, though it was a name he didn't recognize. The address was incomplete, just a series of numbers and letters that didn't match any official institution. The more Noah stared at the paper, the more the unease settled in his stomach. He needed to know more. That night, after the twins had gone to bed, Noah pulled out his laptop and began to dig deeper. He typed the name Isabella Angelica Knox into the search engine and was met with a chilling wave of results. There were articles, reports, and forum posts all referencing the same name. Isabella Knox wasn't just an ordinary person. She was involved with some highly questionable individuals. Noah clicked on one of the links, and his eyes widened as he read about Isabella Knox's connection to a notorious underground network. The reports described her as a key player in a global syndicate known for illegal arms trading, human trafficking, and covert operations that spanned across countries. He was stunned. How could Maya and Lily have ended up with a mother so deeply embedded in such dangerous circles? And more importantly, why were the girls placed into the foster care system if their mother had these kinds of connections? His hands trembled as he sifted through more articles, trying to make sense of it all. The deeper he dug, the darker the picture became. There were whispers of a secret project that involved children, young girls specifically, girls who were trained for roles that went far beyond anything a child should ever be expected to do. Some reports even hinted that these girls were bred for specific purposes, trained to become spies or covert operatives. Though the details were vague, the thought made Noah's stomach turn. Were Maya and Lily part of this? Were they somehow connected to the shadowy world Isabella Knox had been part of? But as Noah continued his search, something else began to surface, something that made him sit up straighter in his chair. Several reports mentioned that Isabella Knox had mysteriously disappeared several years ago, leaving behind no trace. It seemed as though she had simply vanished off the face of the earth, leaving her daughters behind. Noah leaned back in his chair, his mind spinning. If Isabella Knox was really involved with such a dangerous organization, then the girls were in far more danger than he could have ever imagined. But what could that mean for Maya and Lily? They were only 6 years old. What had they witnessed? What had been done to them? There were more questions than answers, and Noah knew he needed to find them. He couldn't just sit idly by. If the twins were in danger, he had to protect them, no matter what. The next morning, as he watched Maya and Lily playing together in the living room, Noah felt a surge of protective instinct. They looked so innocent, so carefree, as they sat on the floor, creating elaborate stories with their toys. But Noah knew that beneath their quiet, childlike facade, there was something darker, something they hadn't yet revealed. He had promised to be their father, to love them, and protect them. But now it seemed like that promise was more important than ever. If he wanted to truly be the father they needed, he would have to uncover the truth about their past, and face whatever darkness came with it. Noah spent the next few days obsessively searching for any clues that might help him piece together the story of Maya and Lily's origins. He contacted the adoption agency again, demanding more information about their past. But the more he pressed, the more the agency became evasive. They claimed they had no further details to share, that the girls had come from a long line of foster placements, and had no other family to speak of. Yet Noah couldn't shake the feeling that they were hiding something from him. His suspicions deepened when he found another document, this one hidden among the girls' belongings in a drawer. It was an old, worn-out journal. The handwriting was small, almost frantic, and the pages were filled with strange, disjointed thoughts. The journal didn't make much sense at first, but one particular passage caught Noah's eye. They told us we were special. They said we were part of something bigger. But I don't believe them anymore. I don't think we belong here. The people watching us, they don't want us to know the truth. But one day, we'll find out. Noah felt his breath catch in his throat. The words were chilling, and they confirmed his deepest fears. Maya and Lily weren't just ordinary children who had been through the foster system. They were part of something much larger, something he couldn't yet understand. He didn't know what kind of world they had come from, but Noah knew one thing for sure. He was in way over his head. The past that Maya and Lily carried with them was dangerous. Too dangerous for a single dad like Noah to confront alone. But he had no choice. He would have to confront their past, no matter the cost, if he wanted to keep them safe. And as the days went on, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, slowly, painfully, and with each revelation, the stakes grew higher. Secrets and shadows. The house had changed. It was no longer the lonely, empty shell Noah had once wandered through. There was life now, a sense of something real that he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Maya and Lily's presence brought a kind of energy to the house that made it feel warmer, albeit underpinned by an unease Noah couldn't shake. The journal had unsettled him more than he was willing to admit. The words had lingered in his mind for days, each passage like a puzzle piece he couldn't place. They told us we were special. They said we were part of something bigger. Who was they? And what did it mean that the girls were special? As Noah sat at his kitchen table, the morning light filtering through the window, he couldn't ignore the gnawing suspicion that there was something much larger at play here. His thoughts circled back to the organization he had read about, the one that had employed Isabella Knox. It had to be more than just a trafficking ring. The sense of secrecy, the bizarre training programs, the idea that the girls were somehow bred for something bigger, it all painted a picture Noah didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. The twins were in danger. No matter how much Noah wanted to push that thought away, he knew it was true. But what kind of danger? The deeper he dug, the more questions arose, and with each one, the sense of impending doom grew. After days of relentless searching online and contacting various authorities, Noah finally managed to get his hands on a few more pieces of information. It was a late evening when he received an encrypted email from an anonymous source. Tip-off, or so it seemed. The email contained only one line of text. Isabella Knox was not just a mother. She was the key. That was it. No other explanation. No follow-up. Just that one cryptic message. It sent a chill down Noah's spine. What did it mean? He clicked on the attached files, which contained old news articles and documents that described Isabella Knox's association with shadowy organizations. But one of the files contained a name he hadn't expected, Dr. Morgan Ellis. Noah froze. Dr. Morgan Ellis. The name was eerily familiar. His own name was Ellis, of course, but his first name was Noah. He couldn't help but wonder if it was a coincidence or something far darker. He had heard nothing about any other Ellis connected to the case. He scanned through the article, which described Dr. Morgan Ellis as a scientist involved in genetic research. The research was not public knowledge, and its secrecy had led to speculation about unethical practices. But as Noah read, one specific detail stood out. Dr. Ellis had been investigating genetic markers for enhanced human potential, and the experiments had involved young children just like Maya and Lily. Could it be possible that these twins, these two girls, were part of something more than just a tragic story of neglect? Were they part of a twisted experiment, their genetic makeup manipulated in ways Noah couldn't even begin to understand? His heart raced as the implications sank in. He had to know more. He had to protect them. But how? Over the next few days, Noah couldn't escape the feeling that he was being watched. It wasn't just a vague sense of paranoia. It was real. When he took the girls to the park, he noticed a man in the distance, always observing them. When they went to the grocery store, there was a woman who seemed to appear out of nowhere, lingering near the aisles. And at night, Noah swore he could hear faint noises outside the house, like footsteps that weren't his own. Someone was following him. Someone knew what he had uncovered, and they weren't going to let him, or the twins, get away with it. Noah knew one thing for certain. The past he was trying to protect them from was catching up to them. The question was, could he protect them from it in time? As the mystery deepened and the shadows closed in around them, Noah realized there was no going back. The truth about Maya and Lily's past was far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. And now he was in it, too. And with every passing day, he felt the grip of something far darker tightening around them all. That night, after tucking the twins into bed, Noah called the number listed in one of the articles, an old colleague of Dr. Morgan Ellis who had apparently been linked to the research. A gruff voice answered the phone after several rings. Yes, the voice said, deep and wary. "I'm looking for information about Dr. Morgan Ellis and his research," Noah said, his voice tight with both urgency and fear. "It's important. It's about two girls, Maya and Lily." The line was silent for a moment. Then the voice spoke again, lower this time. "You don't know what you're asking. You need to stop. You're asking about things that people would rather remain buried." Noah's pulse quickened. "I have to know. These girls, they were part of something. Something horrible. Please, I need help. What was Dr. Ellis really doing?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. The man seemed to weigh his words carefully before speaking again. "If you really want to know, you need to understand that some things don't go away. They follow you, haunt you. This research wasn't just about genetics. It was about creating something stronger. The children involved were part of a program designed to engineer human potential, physically, mentally. The goal was to create beings who could do things that ordinary people couldn't." Noah's throat went dry. His mind struggled to grasp what the man was saying. Enhanced children, special abilities. And Maya and Lily, are they part of this? "Listen to me." The man's voice lowered even further. "Maya and Lily, they aren't just victims of the system. There's something else. What Dr. Ellis was trying to do, it wasn't just for money or power. It was something bigger, something no one was supposed to know about. But he disappeared, and his work was abandoned. Maya and Lily, they're the last of it. The last pieces of the puzzle." Noah was stunned, his hand gripping the edge of the table. What happened to the other children? Were there others like them? The man sighed, and for the first time, there was a sound of real sadness in his voice. Some of them didn't survive the experimentation. The ones that did were scattered, hidden away by various groups. Some of them trying to continue Ellis's work, others to protect them. The government was involved in trying to clean up the mess he left behind. They've been hunting for those children ever since. Noah's mind reeled with the weight of the conversation. It was all starting to make sense. The secrecy, the way the girls had been passed through family after family, the way they didn't quite fit into the world. They were part of a larger, more dangerous picture. Before Noah could say anything else, the man abruptly added, "You need to be careful. There are people watching you. If they know you're looking into Ellis's work, if they know you're looking for those girls, you won't be able to protect them." The line went dead. Noah sat in stunned silence, the words of the stranger echoing in his mind. "You won't be able to protect them." His thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and dread. If Maya and Lily were part of this twisted experiment, what had they been subjected to? And who were these people watching him now? Who was trying to cover up the truth? His heart ached for the twins. He had wanted to give them a normal life, to let them heal. But now he realized that healing wasn't going to be so simple. They weren't just children who had lost their way. They were part of something so much darker, something that could destroy everything Noah had tried to rebuild. Into the unknown. Noah's life had been turned upside down in the span of a few days. He had never imagined that adopting 2 little girls, who had already been rejected by 13 families, would lead him into a world of danger, secrets, and shadowy figures. The fragile sense of normalcy he had built around them was crumbling with every piece of information he uncovered. The truth, he realized, was far more complex than he had ever anticipated. He couldn't shake the feeling that Maya and Lily were never meant to have a peaceful life. At least, not one they would ever be allowed to know. The words from the anonymous informant still haunted him. They're the last pieces of the puzzle. What puzzle? And what exactly did that mean for the twins? Were they the key to unlocking a dark and hidden agenda that spanned beyond anything Noah had ever understood? Or were they simply the product of something sinister, a byproduct of a scientist's ambitions? The twins, for their part, remained blissfully unaware of the dangers lurking around them. They were happy, for now, running around the house, playing together, talking in their secretive little whispers that Noah couldn't quite decipher. Yet, even their innocence couldn't erase the feeling that they were different. They weren't just like any other children. They were more intense, more perceptive, and in subtle ways, more mature than their 6 years of age would suggest. Their eyes, those dark, knowing eyes, seemed to follow Noah wherever he went, as though they were watching him, testing him. The most unsettling part was their unspoken connection. Maya and Lily had an uncanny ability to sense when something was wrong, when Noah was feeling anxious or fearful. It was as if they were tuned into his emotions, often coming to him with an unusual sense of comfort and calmness that belied their age. In moments when Noah was deep in thought, trying to piece together what was happening around them, the twins would quietly approach, offering a hug or a soft word, as if they knew exactly what he was going through. It was becoming harder for Noah to ignore the growing pressure. His life wasn't just about raising 2 girls anymore. It had become a battle for their safety, and for the truth. He knew he couldn't go back to the life he once had. There was no turning back from this path. One evening, as Noah sat at the kitchen table, trying to piece together the various documents he had collected, Maya and Lily were playing in the living room, their laughter a welcome distraction. But even in their laughter, Noah could sense the strange energy between them. It was as though they were both on the verge of something, like they knew more than they let on. His phone buzzed on the table, cutting through his thoughts. He glanced at the screen and froze. It was a message from an unknown number. "You've been asking the wrong questions. The girls are in more danger than you realize. You're being watched. They won't stop until they get them back. You can't protect them alone. Meet me tomorrow. Midnight. The warehouse on Miller Street. Bring no one." Noah's heart pounded in his chest. The message was clear, but it raised more questions than answers. Who was this person? And why were they suddenly reaching out to him? He looked toward the living room, where Maya and Lily were playing with dolls on the floor. He had promised to protect them, but now, the truth about what they were really a part of was far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. If they were being hunted by people who wanted them back, who wanted to control them, then Noah couldn't do this alone. He spent the rest of the evening wrestling with his decision. He couldn't involve the twins in this. They had been through enough already. But who was this stranger, and what did they know that he didn't? Was this an opportunity to finally get answers, or was he walking straight into a trap? The next night, Noah couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made him jump. Every rustle in the bushes outside seemed louder than it was. He knew the warehouse meeting was risky, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had no other choice. He needed to know more. After making sure the girls were tucked safely in bed, Noah slipped out of the house, locking the door quietly behind him. He tried to calm the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind as he drove through the dark streets of the city. The Miller Street warehouse was on the outskirts, tucked away in a part of town Noah had never ventured into. It was isolated, far from the watchful eyes of the public, exactly the kind of place where secrets could be hidden. When he arrived, the street was eerily quiet. No other cars, no signs of life. The warehouse loomed in the distance, its windows dark and foreboding. Noah parked his car a few blocks away and approached on foot, keeping to the shadows. His mind raced, wondering who he was meeting and whether he could trust them. Could this person really help him? Or were they part of the very danger he was trying to protect his girls from? As he neared the entrance, the rusted doors of the warehouse creaked open, revealing a figure standing in the dim light. The person was cloaked in shadows, their face hidden beneath a hood. "You came." The voice was low, calm, but it carried an underlying urgency. It was the voice from the phone. Noah didn't speak at first. He didn't trust easily, and the situation didn't exactly inspire confidence. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with suspicion. "What do you know about Maya and Lily?" The figure stepped forward into the light, revealing a woman in her late 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes. Her hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, and she wore a long coat, as though she'd been waiting for a long time. "I know you've been asking the wrong questions," she said, "but I can help you get the answers you're looking for." Noah felt a knot tighten in his chest. "Who are you?" he repeated, more forcefully this time. "My name is Sarah. I used to work with Dr. Morgan Ellis," she said. The name hit Noah like a punch to the gut. Ellis. It was the link he had been searching for, the missing piece of the puzzle. "I was part of the project," she continued. "I was there when it all began. When we tried to create them." Them? Noah's voice was barely a whisper, his mind struggling to process what she was saying. Sarah nodded. "Maya and Lily. They were part of the final phase of the experiment, the last of the children, the culmination of Dr. Ellis's work. But it's much worse than you know. They weren't just test subjects. They were intended to be something else entirely. Something dangerous." Noah's stomach turned. The pieces were falling into place. But they didn't make sense. If Maya and Lily were part of something so dark, why had they been placed in the foster care system? Why hadn't anyone told him about their past? Sarah hesitated, then lowered her voice. "They're the key to unlocking something far bigger than you can imagine, and people will stop at nothing to get them back. Dr. Ellis's disappearance wasn't an accident. He knew what he was doing. But the truth," she trailed off, as if afraid of what might happen if she said too much. Noah stepped closer, his voice urgent. "What truth? What are you talking about?" "The truth is that Maya and Lily..." Sarah stopped, looking around as if she were afraid someone might be listening. "They're not just special because of their genetics. They're the key to controlling everything. The organization that's after them doesn't just want them back. They want to use them. For power, for control." She met his eyes. "And now, they know you have them. They're coming for you, Noah. Coming for your girls." Noah's blood ran cold. He had thought he was just protecting two innocent children. But now, it was clear that Maya and Lily were much more than that. They were the final piece of a puzzle he could barely comprehend. And now he was in the middle of a fight far bigger than he had ever imagined. The real battle was just beginning. The tipping point. The weight of Sarah's words hung over Noah like a storm cloud that wouldn't break. "They're coming for your girls." That phrase echoed in his mind, twisting and gnawing at his every thought. How could he have known? How could he have seen the warning signs when they were wrapped up in the innocence of two little girls? He had only wanted to give Maya and Lily a normal life, to give them the love they deserved. But now, everything he thought he understood was crumbling before him. Sarah's warnings were unsettling, but they also made sense. The twins were special, not just in the way they connected to each other, not just in the way they seemed to know his moods and thoughts before he did. They were special in a way that could change the course of everything. If what Sarah was saying was true, Maya and Lily weren't just human beings. They were part of a project that had been kept hidden for years. And now, the people who had orchestrated that project were coming after them, and after Noah. He stood in the cold shadows of the warehouse, his thoughts racing as Sarah continued to speak. "You don't understand, Noah," she said, her voice strained with a mix of fear and desperation. "The organization that's behind this isn't just a group of people looking for control. They are far bigger, far more dangerous than you think. They've had eyes on Maya and Lily for years, even before they were born." "What do you mean?" Noah asked, his voice sharp. "Why haven't they come for them sooner?" Sarah's eyes flickered with something akin to regret. "Because they needed time. Time to find out if they could trigger the full potential of what's inside them. You see, Maya and Lily are part of a series of experiments, all designed to push the limits of human abilities. But it wasn't just about making them stronger or smarter. The end goal was to create something that could control people, could control entire systems, entire governments." Noah's head spun. What Sarah was describing sounded like the stuff of science fiction, the kind of conspiracy theories you hear about in hushed whispers, not the real world. Yet everything Sarah was saying fit together, like the final pieces of a puzzle that Noah hadn't even known existed. The twins weren't just the victims of some twisted scientist. They were the weapon. "Noah," Sarah said, stepping closer and lowering her voice, "you need to understand that there's more at play here than just them being special. Maya and Lily are the product of years of research. They have abilities that no one can explain, abilities that people will do anything to control. Do you know why they've been in the system for so long? Why they were passed from family to family?" Noah swallowed, his throat dry. "Because no one wanted them. Because they're dangerous." Sarah cut him off. "No one wanted to deal with that. No one wanted to face the truth of what they were. So the system worked to erase their existence. But now they're older, and their potential is starting to awaken. And that's when the people who created them will come after them, Noah. They'll stop at nothing." Noah's hands clenched into fists, anger and fear battling for dominance inside him. "What do I do? How can I protect them from all of this?" "You can't protect them alone," Sarah said grimly. "I'm not here to tell you a fairy tale. They've been hidden for a reason, Noah. Because people like you, people who love them, will never be able to fight back against the powers that control their creation. I won't let anyone take them," Noah said, his voice low but resolute. He thought of the girls, Maya, with her wide, knowing eyes, and Lily, who had already begun to show a maturity far beyond her years. They weren't just his daughters. They were his responsibility, and no matter the threat, he would protect them. Sarah gave him a long, hard look. "You'll have to make a choice. The clock is ticking, and the longer you wait, the harder it will be to escape." Noah didn't want to think about that. He didn't want to think about the choices that lay ahead. The only thing that mattered in that moment was getting the twins to safety. They needed to leave, now. But where would they go? Who could he trust? "I've got a place," Sarah said, sensing his turmoil. "It's not much, but it's off the radar. We can hide there for a while. At least until we can figure out the next steps." Noah nodded, though a sense of dread clung to him. He couldn't just take Sarah's word for it. He needed to think this through. But there was no time to waste. The more he lingered in the dark, the closer the danger crept. He pulled out his phone and glanced at the time. Almost midnight. The girls would be asleep now. He needed to move quickly. "All right," Noah said, trying to steady his voice. "Let's go." The next few hours were a blur of hurried decisions, tension, and an overwhelming sense of urgency. Sarah led the way, her directions precise and calculated. As they drove through the dark, empty streets, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every shadow seemed to move, every street lamp flickered as though trying to warn him. But he didn't dare slow down. Maya and Lily's safety was the only thing that mattered. When they reached the hideout, Noah was struck by its simplicity. It was a small, isolated cabin on the edge of a dense forest, far away from the prying eyes of the city. The air was thick with the scent of pine trees, and the silence of the night was punctuated only by the distant rustling of leaves. "This is it," Sarah said, her voice tense but calm. "We'll stay here for now. But remember, this is only a temporary solution." Noah glanced at the twins, who had fallen asleep in the backseat. The peaceful look on their faces belied the storm that was brewing. He wasn't sure how long they could stay here, or how long they could hide from the people hunting them, but for now, it was their only option. "I don't understand," Noah said quietly as Sarah opened the door to the cabin. "If they're so powerful, if they're really the key to everything, why would they be passed around like this? Why would they be left in the system?" Sarah shook her head. "Because the people who created them knew it wasn't safe for them to grow up in one place. They had to stay hidden, kept under the radar until the right time. The time when their abilities were ready to fully manifest." Noah's mind was spinning. Abilities. What kind of abilities? He had seen glimpses of it in the twins, the way they seemed to anticipate danger, the way they instinctively trusted each other in a way that was beyond ordinary siblings, but he hadn't thought much of it. Not until now. Now he realized it wasn't just coincidence. They were different. He turned to Sarah. "How do we stop this? How do we keep them safe?" Sarah's expression darkened. "We don't. At least, not without help. The people after them have eyes everywhere. They've infiltrated every system, every organization. We'll need allies, people who aren't afraid to fight back. And we'll need to move fast, before it's too late." Noah nodded, even though he had no idea where to begin. He had no resources, no team, just a deep love for two girls who were caught in a battle they didn't even understand. As the door to the cabin closed behind them, the sound of it locking echoed through the empty night. Noah took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. The fight for Maya and Lily's future was only just beginning, and as the first light of dawn began to break over the trees, Noah knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The true battle had only begun, and it would take everything he had to keep the twins safe. The fight for the future. The cold morning light filtered through the dense trees, casting long shadows across the cabin. Noah stood by the window, staring out into the forest, lost in thought. His mind raced with everything he had learned in the past few days. The secrets about Maya and Lily, the mysterious organization that was hunting them, and the looming threat that seemed to be everywhere. He couldn't afford to rest, not even for a moment. There was no safe place for them, no peaceful corner of the world where they could simply be children. And yet, every instinct in him screamed that he needed to protect them, no matter the cost. The twins were still asleep, curled up in blankets in the back room of the cabin. Their innocence, so pure and untainted, was a stark contrast to the world they had been thrust into. Noah couldn't help but feel a deep pang of guilt. How had he not seen the danger before? How could he have brought them into this, even unknowingly? He had promised to be their protector, and now that promise seemed more difficult than ever to keep. The sound of a door creaking pulled Noah from his thoughts. Sarah stepped into the living room, her face drawn with exhaustion. She had been on edge ever since they arrived at the cabin, and Noah could sense that something was bothering her. She had been the one to suggest this hideout, but now, it seemed like even she wasn't entirely convinced it was enough. "We need to talk," she said quietly, her voice tense. She sat down at the small kitchen table, motioning for Noah to join her. He walked over, his gaze never leaving her face, waiting for the bombshell that he knew was coming. "I've been thinking," Sarah began, her fingers nervously tapping the table, "about the organization that's after Maya and Lily. They're not just any group. They have connections everywhere. Military, government, corporate. They have access to resources that would make most people's heads spin. And the thing is, they don't just want the twins. They want everything they represent." Noah sat down, his heart racing as Sarah's words sunk in. "What do you mean, everything?" Sarah took a deep breath, clearly weighing her words. "Maya and Lily are more than just test subjects. They were designed to be the key to something far bigger, something that could alter the balance of power in the world. Think about it, Noah. If someone could control their abilities, they could change the course of history. They could control entire countries, manipulate economies, even destabilize governments. What the organization created is a weapon. And right now, it's in your hands. Noah's mind reeled. A weapon? He had been so focused on keeping the girls safe, so consumed by the need to protect them from harm, that he hadn't fully grasped the scale of what they represented. They weren't just two girls who needed a family. They were the potential catalyst for something much darker, something that could rewrite the very fabric of society. And the reason they've been passed around, Sarah continued, is because the people who created them couldn't control them. They tried, of course. But there's something unpredictable about Maya and Lily, something no one can control, not even the organization that built them. They're evolving. And that's why it's so dangerous. The longer they go unchecked, the harder it will be for anyone to stop them. Noah's stomach churned. The gravity of the situation hit him all at once. He had thought of Maya and Lily as his daughters, innocent and pure, but now he realized that their past was far more complicated than he could have ever imagined. They were the key to a power that could shake the foundations of the world. And the more he learned, the more he realized just how little he knew about what was truly going on. But what about the twins? Noah asked, his voice thick with emotion. They're just children. How could they be part of something so monstrous? Sarah looked at him, her expression softening for the first time. I know, no. Believe me, I know. But they're not just children. Not in the way you think. They'd been part of an experiment their whole lives, since before they were born. The people who created them were trying to push the limits of human potential. They didn't just want children with special abilities. They wanted to create beings who could control others with their minds, with their thoughts. And that's what Maya and Lily are. They're not just survivors of some twisted experiment. They're the product of. Noah's chest tightened as the reality of Sarah's words stank in. His heart ached for the twins, but there was also a sense of deep confusion. How could he protect them from a past like this? How could he, just one man, keep them safe when the very world they lived in seemed to be built around their destruction? The only reason they're still alive, Sarah continued, is because they've been hidden for so long. They've been in foster care, moving from family to family, because no one could handle what they were capable of. But now that they're older, their abilities are starting to manifest more clearly. They're becoming more aware of what they can do. And the organization knows that too. That's why they're moving in now. They can't afford to let Maya and Lily grow any stronger. Noah's eyes narrowed. And what happens if they do? What if the twins can't control their abilities? What if they become a threat? Sarah hesitated. That's the problem. No one knows what will happen if they reach their full potential. They could become unstoppable, or they could burn out. No one can predict it. But that's why it's so critical that we stop the organization before they can get their hands on the girls. Noah rubbed his face, feeling the weight of the decision he had to make. His entire world had been flipped upside down in a matter of days, and now he was being asked to make choices that would impact not just Maya and Lily, but the entire world. He couldn't let them fall into the hands of people who would use them as pawns in some twisted game of control. But how could he stand against an organization with resources and power beyond his imagination? He stood up, pacing around the small cabin, his mind working furiously. The walls felt like they were closing in on him. He had never asked for any of this. He had never wanted to be part of a larger conspiracy, never imagined that his desire to adopt two girls would lead him down this dangerous road. But he had no choice now. Maya and Lily were his responsibility, and he would do whatever it took to protect them. I'll do whatever it takes, he said, his voice fierce with determination. I won't let them use the girls as weapons. Sarah gave him a solemn look, her expression almost unreadable. It's not going to be easy, Noah. The people after them won't hesitate to do whatever it takes to get them back. They'll stop at nothing. I don't care, Noah said, his voice unwavering. I'm not backing down. If they want the twins, they'll have to go through me. Sarah studied him for a long moment before nodding. All right. But you need to understand, this is going to get a lot more dangerous. We can't stay here for long. We'll need to move again soon. And we'll need allies, people who can help us fight back. Who? Noah asked, though a sense of hopelessness crept into his voice. Who could help them? Who could they trust in a world that seemed to be pulling apart at the seams? There are a few people who might be able to help, Sarah said. People who have been fighting against the organization for years. But we can't trust just anyone. We'll need to be careful about who we reach out to. Noah nodded, though a part of him felt overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what was ahead. He had never imagined that his life would become this tangled in a web of conspiracy, manipulation, and dangerous power struggles. But now, there was no going back. The fight for Maya and Lily's future was on, and it would be a battle like no other. As Sarah walked out of the room to check on the twins, Noah stood by the window again, staring out at the quiet forest. His heart pounded in his chest as the reality of the situation hit him with full force. Maya and Lily weren't just his daughters anymore. They were the center of a war that would determine the future of not just their lives, but the world itself. And Noah was going to fight with everything he had to make sure that they survived, no matter what it took.